couple of quick introductions just of some folks that are here with the Germantown team. And I'd like to recognize our Vice Mayor, our Marion Gibson's here. You can just raise your hand to the audience. Thank you for being here, Vice Mayor Gibson. I think you're joined by Alderman Sherry Hicks here. Thank you, Sherry, for being here. I'm scanning the room. I'm not sure that are there any other aldermen here this evening. I know that our city administrator is here as well, and Jason Heisman is there somewhere, okay, behind Vice Mayor Gibson. And I think I'll let the MLGW folks make their introductions here in a moment. We have two of the board members here as well, so thank you for being here. Just a little bit about this meeting. I'm going to turn it over to Alonzo here in a moment. Just like to simply say that as the city of Germantown has really studied the issue of energy sourcing for public utilities here in this region. You know, residents here in Germantown are ratepayers and customers of MLGW. The city of Germantown is a customer of MLGW as well, so we have a vested interest in some of the decisions that are made on behalf of our long-term future. And as such, our Board of Mayor and Aldermen and the boards of Mayor and Aldermen for the municipalities in Shelby County all adopted and approved it was a resolution that was uniform for all those communities, unanimously approved by all those communities to make the recommendation that MLGW stay with its long-term 80-plus year partner, TVA. We also had some other things in that included ratepayer representation, and I think we've gotten the attention of the board and some of the board members, and those are things we can work on in the future. But as we're having this broad conversation, it was a good time to interject that as well. There's a lot to be learned about this process, and so I'm so glad to have our friends at MLGW. I'd like to just share with our audience tonight, our residents that are here. I saw many of you, and some are from 2 or 3 specific neighborhoods. As Alonzo will go over some of maybe the ground rules and those type of things in a moment. MLGW is here really to gain feedback from you, to also to explain kind of like where we are and maybe where we're going, get feedback from you specifically on the energy source question and maybe some other things associated with that. But whenever we're gathered, sometimes you might have some questions about service or service issues or outages and that type of thing. I think there'll be an opportunity for that at near the conclusion of this evening. And they will be taking notes, and if anything we know, MLGW does a good job of following up in the future. So with that said, again, welcome. And I think I'll turn it over to you. Alonzo Weaver is the Chief Utility Officer, Senior Vice President, and Chief Operating Officer for MLGW. Thank you, Alonzo.
Thank you, Mayor Palazzolo. I appreciate you opening up your City Hall and the hospitality that you've shown to us here, so we can get some good, valuable feedback from people in this community regarding our power supply decision. I want to first recognize the staff that's here from MLGW. We've got Frank Fletcher. Frank has been the project manager, raising hand, Frank, so you know where to get you. Frank has been the project manager for this whole project, for the IRP as well as the RFP process. Has managed the various consultants and working through the various issues and trying to get this to an answer and a conclusion. So I want to thank you, Frank, for being here and thank you for the work that you've done. Rod Cleek has been the co-project manager. He's on the finance side of MLGW. Rod is a manager of special rates, and he is a long-term employee of MLGW, very knowledgeable. Works very closely with the various contracts that we have throughout our organization. We have members from the corporate communications staff that are here, like Gail Jones-Carlson, who's trying to hide in the back. We've got Tamara Nolan, who is here and will be driving the presentation. Lita Garlington and Lillian Johnson, who is here as well as Rafi. I thought I saw Rafi earlier. Oh, there he is up at the top. So Rafi's doing the recording. I'm very pleased to have our board members here. We have Carl Person. Carl is on our board and has been serving on board now for how long?
About 90+ days.
Yeah, so he's got me in neck deep on this, and he's working through all the issues and been very helpful actually. In 90 days has made quite an impact. Mike Pullman, who is a longer term board member, and appreciate him being here as part of the big firm, gives us a lot of advice on how we work our company and how we deal with our company. So, wanted to talk to you just a little bit about power supply first. Still give you plenty of time to make your comments and presentations. This was really born out of a board meeting where we had a discussion with various people who come in and said, hey, you know, 8:30 is early, and downtown's hard to get to. So why can't you do it someplace else? You know, so we decided to have a couple community meetings, get out and see people that may not have had a chance to get to our board meeting and come to tell us about their concerns and their ideas around power supply. But to level set, and for many of you this will be a repeat, I want to talk to you a little bit about how we got to our solution. We'll give you a brief RFP recap. We'll talk to you about the updated analysis, the RFP conclusions and recommendations, and summary. So, in our RFPs, we sent out RFPs based on what the Integrated Resource Plan had identified as good portfolios was to consider. So, many of you heard portfolio 6 and 9, which was some combination of local generation, thermal generation, as well as local solar and some solar that's in the MISO region, along with other generation resources out in the MISO region. And then there was so there's an RFP for 6 and 9, thermal and solar. We had put out an RFP for transmission because we had to get it to us. In our analysis, it showed that we would have 2 transmission lines coming across the Mississippi River and 1 transmission line coming from Mississippi. And those transmission lines had to be bid on and they determined what that cost would be and how that would affect us. And then we had an all of the above type of, all requirements type of RFP that was out. That was embedded in there. And those RFPs responses came back in as to what we could do from an all-inclusive type setup. Long-term partnerships part of that. So if you've been keeping up, you say in June we had a slightly positive result. In other words, where the cost was less to do portfolio 6 and 9 than it turned out to be here in September when we made this presentation. What changed? What changed was the cost of solar. The market has changed on solar, and we got real prices from real solar vendors, and it showed a change in the savings calculation. In fact, it shows that there were no savings if we stayed with portfolio 6 and 9 and use a combination of solar and natural gas, and all 4 requirements projects were more expensive. So the best and the lowest cost proposal was a TVA long-term partnership. And the long-term partnership does have some solar availability in there. So, comparing the long-term partnership to our present agreement, it has some key benefits. Now, the biggest thing, and we've heard a lot of comments around this, and we understand that. The termination notice goes from a rolling 5 years. In other words, all of our contracts with TVA have some sort of evergreen contract. So that's not unusual in the industry, that's just kind of the way it works. So it goes from a rolling notice of 5 years to a rolling notice of 20 years. The base rate change of the long-term partnership is a 3.1% decrease. That's easy. And it gives you the ability to acquire renewables up to 5% of MLGW's needs. But it also gives you some other flexibilities that are there with the Green Invest program and that sort of thing. So you have a lot of different options there. So if you take the savings of the long-term partnership, you start, and one key thing about the long-term partnership compared to the other portfolios, 6 and 9, the long-term partnership savings start at the time we make sign a contract. You don't have to build out anything, there's no big capital investment. It just happens. And then when you go to portfolio 69, you're talking about a considerable amount of work that has to be done in getting these transmission lines across the river. You got the construction of the generation plants in your local area, the acquiring of solar power for those various areas, and a lot of reconfiguring of our transmission system because of the fact that we have to get power flows from a different direction. So it's a little bit daunting. However, we did look at it and see the overall savings, starting with the long-term partnership, say we signed in 2023, would add up to about $152 million from 2023 to 2027. So, and like I said, it starts from the signing contract. Assuming the LTP stays in effect with all the different savings that they talked about throughout the period of 2023 to 2047, you could be approximately $944 million nominal dollars over the 25 years period. So it's about $32 a year benefit on residential electric bill. So based on that, we came to the conclusion that we should recommend the long-term partnership with TVA as the solution for the best benefit for the greatest good of the community. We used real-world current prices because remember I talked to you about what happened in June when we presented the prices. Those prices that we had in June were actually prices that were quoted in December. So what we asked all of the members of the shortlist to do was to refresh your prices. When you refresh your prices, things flipped. And that's exactly what happened. So the long-term partnership is the most cost-effective power supply arrangement, and we can achieve immediate savings by executing the long-term partnership. So there's our recommendation. This is what we presented to the board in September. It demonstrates the greatest value. It does provide some flexibility in a range of technologies around solar generation. Supports local renewable and sustainability goals. We could put in companies come to your area, they may want some degree of local solar or some type of solar arrangement because they have it in their portfolio and we'll keep that in their portfolio of power supplies. So they are, it could be attractive as far as an economic development standpoint. And by being a partner of TVA, you have some direct involvement. Remember, all of these investments are long-term investments. Everybody talks about 20 years being a long time. Well, if we had done a contract with one of the portfolios, we would have been a 20-year agreement. We would have been a 20-year agreement. And those, you don't necessarily end it easily because you're not going to make another investment very easily. So you've got to figure out how you're going to make that work for you in the long term. So there is a 20 years is out there, not just in the long-term partnership, but also in one of the portfolios, in many of the portfolios. So let's keep that in mind. We asked that the board reject the transmission contract. Well, I don't want to read all that for you, but in essence, the RFPs for thermal and solar would be rejected. We would accept the long-term partnership as the proposal to be accepted and sign a contract based on that. So our next steps after that meeting were public comments. We've had several board meetings. A lot of people have presented, have made their comments, and we appreciate their comments. Some people have sent comments in via the web, and we take it by email, so you can make your comments by email as well. You can look at the vendor submitted proposals, which is a lot of information. I think about 5,000 pages, and you can take a look at all of that if you like. We're going to ask the board to approve a resolution later on this year. And if they approve the resolution for the long-term partnership, then we will move that to the city council. So, tonight, we want to hear from you. The ground rules are, the comments are limited to 3 minutes each. Not looking for presentations, just your comments. Power supply comments will be heard first, because that's what we came here for. So we really like to hear power supply comments. If you got reliability issues, we're glad to hear from you. If we don't have enough time, just get with one of us afterwards and let us know what the issues are, and we can get that information. Board members and staff, when I answer questions, we're here to listen to you. So that's where we sit, and I'll turn it back over to our MC, Tamara.
That would be me. Good evening. I have your comment cards here. If you would like to make a comment, please see Frank or Lillian in the back to get a comment card. And I will call the names in the order in which I received them, first starting with power supply questions. You can step to either podium and push the microphone button until it turns green. First up is Dennis Lynch.
I would love to make a comment, and I will make a comment. Yes, but I'm not from Germantown, I'm from Midtown Memphis, and the MLGW folks have heard my comments before. I'd like to go last, let the Germantown folks, since it's your city and your community, let Germantown folks speak first, if that's okay. But don't pass me up, please. Thank you, Dennis. Appreciate all the time. Thank you.
Okay, next up I have Sarah Houston. Sarah's ready.
Yeah, y'all heard from me a couple times. Thank you so much, everybody. Sarah Houston. I want you an address, or are we just talking? Y'all know our stance. I'm the executive director of Protect Our Aquifer. We have vested interest in this decision because 100% of the water used at the cooling plant, or for cooling the methane gas plant TVA runs here, is aquifer water. It's coming from the Davis and Allen well fields, and upwards of 5 million gallons a day. Energy generation has a direct water impact. It can have a negative water impact if we have more renewables. So Protect Our Aquifer wants a partner in our power supplier, and TVA has made it very difficult for us to protect the aquifer since our origin. Back in 2016, we started up to actually challenge their placement of wells at their new gas plant across from coal ash ponds. Those would have drawn arsenic down into our drinking water supply at a much faster rate than the natural rate happening. So we fought that. TDEC came in, and eventually Shelby County Groundwater Board changed their permits. They're no longer allowed to use those permits. Then when TVA was dewatering the coal ash plants, getting ready to move that coal ash, they were dewatering straight into McKellar Lake without pretreatment. A whistleblower told us this is happening. We once again stood up and said, hey, there should be an amendment to their permit, making sure that they're actually pre-treating this arsenic before they're discharging it into our surface water bodies. That was another thing I had to call TVA on. Then this coal ash move, it's been another added thing. And now this has energy generation impacts, and we want to see a partner that we don't have to fight every step of the way, that's actually willing to commit to doing what is best for the community, what is doing best for the aquifer. Signing a long-term, never-ending contract is going to make that very difficult, and we don't feel that that trust is there yet. So this 5-year current contract, while we see these big numbers, $600 million over the next 40 years, that's if we were to stay on that forever. If we were to sign this contract, this never-ending contract, and then maybe in 3 years we see the market completely shift, which we've seen it shift from June to September, what's to say the market's not going to shift drastically in 6 months from now? If we see that shift, we have to give a 20-year notice. Who the heck knows what the market's going to be doing 20 years from that moment? And so we're asking you to stay on this current contract, continue to play out what this Inflation Reduction Act does for solar generation, what that can do for potentially leveraging our position with TVA, getting a better deal, not signing this current contract. Okay, we have in Memphis a Shelby County specific contract that is going to take into account our aquifer and the community that generates this power. So with that, y'all know our stance. I appreciate this time. I look forward to hearing from y'all. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Jim Kavarik. I'm not sure if I have your last name. That's right.
Thanks for this opportunity to speak. My name is Jim Kavarik. I live in 1957 Jackson and 38107. I've been a Memphis for 41 years and a founding member of the board to protect Aquifer. My comments today are about TVA, MLGW, and the future of power. And it all comes down to the same conclusion: do not sign this forever contract with TVA. So a little history. I worked on contracts with TVA and MLGW in the 80s at Memphis State University. And I know that the love and attention that we are seeing now from TVA has historically come and gone. In the mid-80s, TVA had a robust presence down on Beale Street. They had an office there, and they were an entire staff dedicated to community development. This was a unit, by the way, with no connection to the power side of TVA. At the same time, TVA, along with MLGW, ran a world-class weatherization program. This provided low-interest loans for an entire range of energy-efficient needs. All of this was amortized on MLGW bills and paid off over 8 years. This program died somewhere in the 90s, and it was not a donation or a pitch to sign a contract, but it was an honest effort equal to the needs that arose at that time. Now, MLGW, throughout the 80s and beyond, had a very wise and forward-looking community presence. People like Larry Papazan and Paul Payne were deeply invested in community programs well beyond utility assistance. One of those programs, sponsored and funded by MLGW, was Energy Vision, that lasted 3 years, 87 to 1990, and it brought together leaders in energy, water, waste, and policy. But in a pattern similar to TVA, MLGW has become more corporate and less than a true community leader. It's just a seller of power. It's been a poor guardian of both water and our trees, and we can do better on both fronts. Finally, I want to address the future, and the one guiding idea here is to keep our options open. We have no idea what the future holds. For example, 20 years ago was a world without cell phones, and as technology now grows by quantum leaps, I have no idea, we have no idea of what the world and the energy future will look like. To tie our city and county to one provider and only their options will cut us off from the coming revolutions that will reshape energy over the next 20 years. So in closing, I'd just like to say, I do not want TVA to be my energy landlord forever. I want MLGW to grow up, step up, and be a full-service utility with a public purpose. In this end, this is not about TVA, this is about MLGW. Can they grow up and come up with a local power plan and make it work for all citizens served by a public-private utility? I think smart, wise, and well-meaning leaders can do this. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Robert Sharp.
It's green and good. My name is Bob Sharp. I live at 2407 Legs. I'm a resident of Germantown. I've lived in Memphis my entire life, this area. I am relieved you guys are staying with TVA. They're reliable. I've watched other places around the country where they've lost their power in my entire life, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. Anytime that I've lost power, it's been what's called kind of last mile. lines are down, whether it's straight line winds or ice storms, this, that, and the other, it's never been TVA. And so it seems to me, have been maybe the best value, no, the best value to provide the power that you have needed. They have been reliable. And it just seems like so many other places don't have that. I think they've been competitive. I think you guys assure that. I've been in business. You have to have reliable power. And there's just so many things that aren't. The wind doesn't blow, the sun's not out. So you have to have backup. You have to have long-term plans. You guys have shown that. I appreciate you coming to Germantown and letting us speak. Stay with TVA. Thank you.
Thank you. Ward Archer.
Thank you. My name is Ward Archer. I live 335 Kenilworth in Memphis, State 112. And to Bob Sharp, respect Greg's comment, we do need reliability, and that's not what we have a problem with. It's this evergreen contract that renews every year. And until we can get something else figured out, I think we should stick with what we've got. And Alonzo, is it possible to go back to your second slide that shows the different quotes? Okay. How is it possible that everybody's price goes up except TVA's? When my utility bill this summer went up almost 50% because of their ability to pass along charges to us. How is that possible? How are they projecting this? I know that your company, MLGW, does a better job of buying natural gas than TVA. I don't know if you know this or not, but they're really good at it. I mean, since they took over buying that spot market gas, what was it, 20 years ago? Yeah, they've done a heck of a job. And TVA is not so good. So I'm finding this hard to swallow, okay? I mean, I'm sure this consultant's great, and I trust everybody here, and y'all are wonderful people. But this seems a little weird to me that theirs doesn't go up, and the baseline for all is identical. But be that as it may, and all the environmental things that we have fought with TVA, as Sarah has talked about, it was us against the world on those things. And we turned out to be right. And I gotta tell you, this does not feel right to me at all. This never-ending contract. I mean, who would ever sign a contract that renews every year? I would never do that. You would never do that. You would never do that. You would never do that. It's crazy. You know, it's like signing up for HBO for the next 200 years or something. So, you know, I think that this needs to be like sideline, and let's keep what we got till we can figure this out. So let's stick with the 5-year contract. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sophia Overstreet.
Is it okay if my friend Howard goes first? We're speaking together, and my part kind of builds off of her part.
What name was that?
Kyrie Gardet.
Let's see. I don't even see your card.
It's spelled.
Yes, I see it now. Yes, come on, please.
Hello, I'm Kyrie. I'm a resident of Germantown, and I just have a few questions to ask you about what we would do if you did join this contract.
I'm sorry, we're only taking comments, we're not answering any questions. So if you have comments, you can share those.
So the energy burden in Memphis is already quite high, and the risks that we take when we enter a 20-year contract is pretty high, since the political power of Memphis will be limited in a 20-year contract concerning upfront negotiations. So those are some things that we have to consider here. If the gas prices continue to fluctuate as they have been, how could that affect costs for us? How would we negotiate for lower costs while we're in a 20-year contract with TVA? How can we ensure that that's not going to affect us and not going to affect the already high energy burden, not only in Germantown, but in Memphis and those low-income communities? That's pretty much all of my comments on this matter. I do have some questions for later.
Thank you.
Okay, so I want to start by saying
Can you give us your name and address?
Oh,
please?
yes, most certainly. My name is Sophia Overstreet. I live at 7586 Willie Road, 381 Okay. I want to start by saying I am really, really proud to be a part of the Memphis community, especially tonight, seeing people from so many different parts of Memphis here to speak out about this, here to raise awareness about this. It's very encouraging. It's one of the things I love most about the city. And another thing I really love about the city is that, can I move this down? Okay. Great. Is the fact that Memphis has committed to being a green city. Our mayor is a part of the Global Coalition of Mayors, which is a group that is dedicated to making sure that cities move forward in a climate-aware way. And we've been making big strides lately. Back in August, we released the historic Green Fleet, which was a huge step for our city. And it's all been very encouraging. But I feel as if I know that if we enter this contract with TVA, it will be a major step back. TVA plans to build 5,000 megawatts of new gas or more over the next decade. That would make it one of the largest gas compounds in the country. Regardless of where gas plants are built, they accelerate climate change, including severe weather, which Memphis has already dealt with a lot, including back when we had the snowstorm in 2021. Which left huge chunks of Memphis without power, and it hit Southwest Memphis communities hardest. I know I said earlier that I'm proud to be a Memphian. I encourage everyone tonight to think of all of Memphis, not just this affluent pocket that we have here in Germantown. Yes, we might be able to deal with power outages and uncertain gas prices as we enter a 20-year contract, and gas is extremely volatile right now, and we don't know where it will go. We can handle that here, but other people in Memphis can't, and it is our moral responsibility, and also our responsibility as as politicians, as board members, to make sure that those people are taken care of. So please consider that. It hit Southwest Memphis communities hardest, following the nationwide trend in which poor Black communities are denied resources and infrastructure investment. Southwest Memphis already carries some of the highest energy burdens in Memphis, some of the highest energy burdens in the state. And they also carry the cumulative health burdens of 60 years of being next to Allen's coal plant, which is pumped coal in the air. If we enter into this and these 5,000 megawatts of gas compounds are built, it will hit those communities the hardest, and that is not something that is okay. Furthermore, if we enter into the 20-year contract with TVA, we have no way of guaranteeing that they will continue to listen to advocates like this and pay attention to Memphis, because they won't have any incentive to. I mean, we have to give them 20 years of notice. I noticed earlier when you were going through the slides that you were able to give us the benefits for the next 4 years, the next 5 years, but nothing beyond that, and that's because we don't know what will happen beyond that, and we also can't control it because we have no leverage if we give them 20 years to do whatever they want if we have a problem. I think that this moment is extremely important. If we leverage it right, we can ask for green energy as a community. Advocates can continue to speak out like this. We can continue to ask our representatives to fight for green energy, and we can continue to explore those options and move forward as a community. But if we don't, and we enter this 20-year contract, we are locking ourselves in to an unsustainable form of energy, an unsustainable contract that is a mark on the integrity of Memphis and does not align with the goals that Memphis has to be a climate-positive city. I ask you to consider all of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Jacobs.
My name is Jim Jacobs. I live at 7684 Apple Valley Road, 38138 here in Germantown. I have lived here for 36 years, moved to Memphis in 79, so I have quite a bit of experience with MLGW and TVA. I also spent 20 years of my career working in the electric utility industry as a manufacturing engineer in a manufacturing plant for distribution equipment. I have the highest respect for TVA as a supplier of electricity. I have tremendous respect for MLGW. However, I do not have any respect for a 20-year contract. It makes no sense whatsoever to me. I do not see the benefit. It has not been explained what the benefit is of a 20-year contract over the rolling 5-year contract that we currently have. I don't, as one gentleman said earlier, I don't see anybody in this room who I would expect would sign a continuous ongoing contract that requires 20 years notice to terminate. It just makes no sense whatsoever. The other issues that I have with regard to MLGW and power supply is that we're not represented as members of the communities outside of Memphis. This is not right not to have ratepayer representation for approximately 30% of your customers. This is an issue that needs to be addressed. Let's be equitable to all of your citizens, all of your rate-paying customers. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. I appreciate the good work. I am in favor of continuing with TVA, but I am not in favor of a 20-year contract. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a card from E.H. Moore. You have solar. Is this in regards to power supply?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
More line, M-O-R-R-E-I-M, and I can barely write this, the pen wasn't.
Okay.
Thank you kindly for this session. I do appreciate it. And I'm not either for or against TVA. There are some dimensions on home solar that I want to bring to your attention, which probably are not entirely on the radar. Within the past year, I have spent an enormous amount of money for 32 panels up top, 2 enormous Tesla batteries in the garage, and a host of great big boxes on the side of the house. I'm very happy to have spent that. I'm happy to have it. I did it, A, because the grid is increasingly fragile, not in any particular order, but also I take climate change very seriously, and I'm willing to contribute in that sense. I do not, in my wildest dreams, expect for this to pay for itself. I get that. That said, I think there are ways in which MLGW can encourage solar much better than it does at present. Installation process, the whole ramp it up, get it done. It took 2.5 months just to get the paperwork approved and say, check box, signed, so that they could schedule the installation. 2.5 months, a couple of phone calls, and I'll be honest with you, on my last phone call, and I waited over a month in between phone calls. I tried not to get past. But on the second phone call, I finally said, would it be help if I contacted my city council? And the person said, no, that's not at all. It got signed that afternoon. Okay, so I will say at other phases in the installation, MLGW was spot on. When they were actually putting in the electrical work and that, MLGW needed to be there, bang, they were right there, did what needed to be done, they were right on time, good move. So I think MLGW needs to review where are the lags in the process. The other thing I wanted, if I may please, I have, if I may, a sheet of paper for each of you. Can I approach? Thank you kindly, and I guess I'll let you pass it. It has to do with the financial arrangements for solar. And I did a little color coding here. I knew that I would not be paid generously by TVA. You can see on the left what month we're talking about. My system didn't get ramped up until the middle of June. We had a glitch here and there. This is part of the game. Okay. So I spent a part of June, all of July, August, September, And then, and that shows, the top part shows money that I've been paid by TVA as I produce more and more electricity on my own. And it's interesting, one month I got 7 cents per kilowatt hour. Oh, and it went down in September as I gave them more. It was almost 5 cents per kilowatt hour. The important part is for MLGW is that lower set of numbers. Early on, when I wasn't, producing as much, well, I was producing solar, but soaking it up in 100-degree air conditioning, okay? The amount that I actually paid initially in the first bill that you'll see there was about 14.5 cents per kilowatt hour. Okay. Every month I also pay $13 for connection to the grid. I get that. That's fair. Help with the infrastructure. But you will see the last one, the very bottom one, I've got some pink on, you will see that when I only used 20 kilowatt hours, I paid $15.12. That means 75.5 cents per kilowatt hour. And when you factor in the 13 bucks a kilowatt hour, I was paying over $1.40 for each individual kilowatt hour that I used to pay 14 cents for, okay? And I'm sure that this is part of a flat rate structure. Gee, the less you use, the more you pay. I'm already paying the connectivity fee. And so I think they need to restructure when you're using this little and you've got solar, we should not be punished for contributing and reducing the amount of infrastructure that MLGW has to build. I'm paying a lot of my money to help TVA and MLGW not have to build as much. Thank you.
Thank you. Claudio Mier. I don't have a subject matter. What would you like to speak about? Is the power supply?
Yes.
You are speaking about power supply. Okay. Come on up.
Thank you. My name is Charles Meyer. I'm a professor of civil engineering at the University of Memphis, and I've been a resident of Germantown for 7 years. And I had questions actually, so I have to rephrase this into comments, I guess, but I am worried about what are the energy sources behind these different offers. I think that that's very important in a bunch of different respects. One is that we need to stay open to adapt. And I think 20 years with one single provider who has more or less fixed mix of sources is not a good idea. A short personal story, before I moved to Germantown in my own country of origin, I was an expert in environmental impacts of hydropower. So, how can we try to build this big dam and not cause so many impacts? I mean, 7 years later, this is completely moot. I would never now, even think about, recommending this to anyone. Why would we destroy rivers forever, right? If we know that the price of solar, the price of wind, the size of the turbines, the scale economies are just driving all of this down and down and down. Where are we going to be 20 years from now with this? I don't know, but obviously, these renewables are going to be much cheaper. And there's going to be less coal to burn and less oil to burn, no matter what they haven't found yet. Another thing with this mix of energy sources that to me is important is to think about the future. And that basically means that everywhere here it says, this is the lower cost, but I disagree. It's the lowest price, and the price is not the same thing as the cost. And every time I make an important decision in my life, I just won't go by the price. I just won't look at the price. I will look, where was this manufactured? Was there, labor, slave labor behind this? Is this a country that is, repressing their citizens? Was this manufactured, in a place that has strong unions where people get decent salaries? A very clear example to me about the difference between cost and price is that the cheapest solution to cool our current plant, the gas plant, was to take water from the aquifer, which is basically straight potable, and use that instead of cleaning water from the Mississippi River because it was a bit more expensive. But obviously, if you think about how much this is costing us as a society, it makes no sense to use potable water to cool a power plant and then dump this water into Mississippi and the Gulf of Mexico. And obviously there are a bunch of other reasons why cost is different than price, including climate change that everybody has mentioned, the fact that we probably would have fewer trains crossing the city, air pollution, here and everywhere there are coal and gas plants, and so on. I'm also very concerned about the world trends at the moment. I think this is a very turbulent moment to take a 20-year decision about anything. Thank you very much. And I also want to install solar panels,
Is there anyone else in the audience who have comments about power supply that didn't turn a card in? I got you there. If not, Dennis, you can come
up. Thank you for moving me, and thank you for having this meeting and getting all this great input. Many people have mentioned the 20-year contract, and the chart obviously has some details on the 20-year contract. There's two other items related to the 20-year contract that keep getting overlooked and avoided and ignored. It's not 20 years, it's 20 years, add another year once we've passed another year, and add another year, and add another year. It goes on forever. It does not stop. That's why people have referred to it as a forever contract. Second thing is, if MLGW decides to exit that, they sign a contract and then at some point decide to exit that contract, there's huge penalties. All of the discounts, all the money that's saved, all of the opportunity that TVA has promoted, reasons to do that contract, go away. MLGW has to pay it back. Okay? Now, the 3.1% discount that they're offering is only on the base rate. It is not on the connection fee, and it's not on the fuel surcharges. So it's not a 3.1% discount. Another thing to understand is that the average reduction in the cost of solar energy over the last 5 years before the inflation spike was an annual growth rate of 6% of a reduction. So that the net over 5 years, I'm sorry, I used to know these numbers, but I think it was like 40% reduction. So that's huge compared to the 3.1%. And I know the 3.1% would start right away, but put it on a spreadsheet, calculate it, it's a much bigger advantage than the silly little 3%. Another point here is the current economic situation is not the time to sign a new contract. We should be looking to avoid risk and seek competitive rates. And I think all of the contractors, the two biggest solar contractors in Tennessee did not provide bids. Why is that? How much did MLGW and its consultant go out and seek the best solar contractors? I wasn't impressed with the bids from the various solar contractors. What was wrong with that, and who tried to fix that problem? Expanding energy efficiency programs. When the cost of fuel is going up, when your cost of energy is going up, you got to find ways to reduce, to improve your energy efficiency. And the Save the Pennies program is good, but it only covers a certain number of customers each year. And MLGW and the city of Memphis and all the suburban communities in Shelby County need to find ways to really expand the renewable energy program. Protect our aquifers already made their points, but we shouldn't be using the aquifer water to cool our power plants. The last thing I will mention, what is the city of Memphis, what is MLGW, what's Germantown, what are all the communities doing to reduce the cost of gas heating this winter? It's going to be 30% higher than it was last year. Who can afford that, and what can be done about that? That's sort of outside of the TVA, long-term power supply, but it is an issue, and we're going to hear about it a lot in the news. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Okay, now we have some comments from customers regarding reliability. Ray Clausen. A reminder to keep your comments to 3 minutes and comments only.
Ray Clausen, 7480 Willie Road. lived at the same house since 2005, and immediately when we moved in, we had occasional problems with keeping our electricity. Over the past 5 years, it has just gotten over the top. I emailed my city representatives this past Wednesday or Tuesday, and I couldn't even respond to them because Wednesday at 2:20, my electricity went out, and I thought, well, it was just a little windstorm. They'll have it fixed in an hour or two, and it was 10:30 the next day before my electricity was back up and running. When it goes out, all I've got is a map on my phone. There's no human being that I get to speak with. There's no plan on it being out until this amount of time. But I don't think that I should have to buy a generator when I live in the city. And I don't know what the average person considers acceptable for electricity going out. But when my electricity is going out for more than a day, 3, 4, 5 times a year, that seems a bit ridiculous. And I know that MLGW can look and see, oh man, this neighborhood, time after time, loses its electricity. What is the problem here? Because this isn't normal. What can we do to correct this? And yet we patch it and we go right back, and I hold my breath every time that any storm comes through thinking, I'm gonna lose electricity again. And then it does go out also. I'll come home and my lights will be blinking, so sometimes it just goes out for 5 minutes or something like that. But in the 21st century, you don't expect to have to wonder whether you're gonna lose electricity or not. And so I would love if we could come to some resolution. We could look and say, this is old equipment. That's what I've been told, is that it's old equipment, and that we could do something to fix that. That's all I got to say about that. I will say with the TVA that MLGW's got 2 things as far as I'm concerned to deal with, and that would be reliable energy and affordability. And those 2 things are what I would make sure that I'm paying attention to. And if I can save a little bit of money because y'all got me paying less for my utilities, I can plant a tree, I can buy a washing machine that saves a little more water, but I don't want to pay for green energy. I want to pay for the cheapest thing possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Jan Bell.
Good evening, I'm Jan Bell. I live at 7535 Willie Road. There's several of us here tonight. Germantown Heights is the oldest subdivision in Germantown. It's over 60 years, founded in 1956. I've been at 44, my husband and I would just echo, Gray is one of my neighbors, everything that he said. Thank you, Gray. I don't have to say more. We're interested in reliability. We've had more frequent power outages. We have a lot of trees. We will admit that. Some of your people from MLGW were in the neighborhood today, taking assessment of some things that maybe could be done, so I'm very encouraged by that. I've emailed Mayor once in a while, or whoever we need to speak to, so I'm delighted. This was a learning session for me tonight regarding TVA. I don't have any real knowledge of what's going on versus the other sources. But it's been a great learning session. Thanks for coming out to Germantown.
Thank you. And Kathy Schultz.
I'm Kathy Schultz, and I also live in the Germantown Heights subdivision. And I agree with everything they said, but I also want to add one more thing to think about. About a month ago, one of the outages, a neighbor's very tall dead tree branch fell down and hit the electric lines, killed half the transformer, and took all the electricity off our house, which was very expensive. And this very tall dead tree is still there. So my concern is it's also right next to the pole where the transformer is. It's going to go down again probably and take out, lots more of the neighbor's electricity. So if it's in your neighbor's yard, if it hits your house, it's your responsibility. But there used to be a way of, cutting some branches, trimming some trees. And this very tall dead tree, I brought it up to utility workers who of course are not administrators, but they said there was nothing that could be done about it. So I just want to let you know that eventually the pole with the transformer is going to go down again, and we're going to have the same problem again. Thank you.
Mrs. Schultz, if you can get with Jason Heisman, he's right in the back behind the vice mayor. When we disband, he'll get your contact information. We'll see whose property that tree's on.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Those are all the comment cards I have.
Well, thank you very much, Tamara. Thank you to all of you who came out and gave us comments today. We really appreciate it. The liability issues, we do want to address those. And if you got some of that information and share some additional information today, that's been very helpful, and we're going to address those as well. As I said, there will be another meeting at the First Baptist Broad. That will be Thursday night?
Thursday, October 20th.
From 6 to 7:30. And to give any additional comments there. I appreciate Mayor Carlos once again for opening up this City Hall and for the board members for being here for this meeting and all of you for coming. Thank you very much.
Well, there'll be, if Germantown folks or Germantown Heights, if you want to mill around, I'm sure MLGW will talk to you, and we will as well. We've got, I think, 3 aldermen and the city administrator here, so thank you, MLGW, appreciate it.